What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're taking a look at my third ever USPSA match. If you've been tuning into this journey at all, you know that I've been shooting for a long time. I just recently got into competition shooting, and I'm kind of doing this video blog series as a way to hold myself accountable and share my progress and training tips with you guys as I get better, and hopefully we're all getting better together. So this third USPSA match that I shot was a classifier match. Here's some highlights. So overall, my shooting improved significantly over my second match. I actually performed reasonably well. I finished 10th overall out of like 40 shooters, I think. And because it was a classifier match, that means each of the stages that I shot was a classifier stage. And what we're going to do is kind of go through each one of these stages. I'll critique my own performance, describe a little bit how I prepared for the match, and then also get into the weeds just a little bit for those who are less familiar with how the USPSA classification system works. So let's look at my overall performance first. So I would say that this competition did draw a little bit more of a competitive crowd than the last match that I went to at this range. I think that's just because it was a classifier match. Folks are coming out who are familiar with competition and eager to get classified. I ended up finishing 9th out of 40 overall, which I'm very happy with. And then I finished 5th out of 14 in carry optics, again, showing improvement on both of those. And pretty happy with it. In preparation for this match, I was extremely disciplined in my dry fire. I continued, dry firing very regularly, focusing a lot on my index and getting a quick target acquisition. And then also I hit reloads a lot. Both of those things did seem to pay off quite a bit during the match. And then I also continued to use the ACE VR system, still seeing a lot of progress with that. I think its biggest benefit is a little bit on the mental game side, just getting used to stage planning and thinking about the most efficient way to shoot stages, and also in kind of the visions in the transitions side of the house. So super comfortable with that. Surprisingly though, the kids were getting ready to go back to school. I'm getting ready to start classes again for my graduate program, and the family is very busy. So I've not actually done any live fire in between these two matches. It was all just dry fire prep. With all of that, let's dive into this first stage, talk about the stage itself, and then what I think I could improve, and then overall how the classification system in USPSA works.
Are you ready?
Ready.
Stand by. Finish on low, show clear. Clear, slide down, trigger holster. Range is clear.
So this is classifier 24-02. It's one of the new ones for this year, and it is called This Is More Better Now. I ended up finishing 17th out of 40 overall. First stage of the day, knocking the rest off. Couple things I'll address here as far as my performance. First, my draw felt good. Moving to my first firing position, it felt good. My index on the first target of the day was really bad, and I ended up looking for the dot. That was the only time that happened through the entire day. Other than that, like my index, my draw, my presentation all felt very natural. I don't know why it happened. Could have been nerves. Could have also been that I was doing it on the move, and that's not something that I traditionally dry fire, but now it is certainly something that I will work into my dry fire, and that is drawing on the move and finding the dot on the move on an entry to a firing position. My marksmanship was okay. Overall on this one, I had 12 ace and 6 C's, no mics, no deltas. And so overall, not terrible, a little bit slow. If I'd shaved, that quarter second or half second off at the beginning, I would have been okay. The stage plan overall wasn't bad. And the other thing I'd say is, in the last video, a lot of folks commented on my breathing. I'm certainly aware of it as well. My breathing during movement and then seemingly holding my breath during strings of fire is 100% subconscious. I don't know if it impacts my performance. I do think it's evidence of tension, meaning that like I'm clearly hyper focused on the engagement. And if my breathing is tense and such that I'm not breathing during a string of fire, it's certainly likely that the rest of my body is also really tense rather than having the tension and the pressure where it needs to be, in the forearms and in the grip, but relaxed shoulders, relaxed torso, that whole thing. There are a lot of other things I need to fix, I think, before the breathing. And because it's subconscious, I also know it's probably going to be very difficult to train out. And so it's one of those things I'm just going to have to practice in live fire and during matches to, get that under control. But because I know I need to be focusing on a lot of other stuff, like getting a good clean draw, making sure my index is dead on, moving efficiently through the stage, I'm probably putting that one on the back burner for now. And then it'll be something that I focus on later if it is, in fact, still impacting my performance as I continue to improve on all of those other things. So let's talk about the USPSA classifier system a little bit. The way that the classifier system works, it functions to try to, normalize shooting levels and skill levels across all competitors, regardless of where they're geographically located. The idea here is that there's a set of standard drills that are measured and set up the exact same way, and shooters from across the country compete using these drills and then submit their scores to a centralized database, which then aggregates all those scores, and we can get an idea of where you fall against your peers. The classification system, think like it's a belt system in a martial art. So, you have your GM level shooters who are like Jedi Knights and that are just freaking insane, national competitors, and frankly, the best shooters in the world. M-class shooters are just underneath that, and then A, B, C, and D, and then unclassified levels of shooters. I don't know what I am. Well, I do now, based off of this match. But the way they determine where you fall on that scale is after everyone shoots the match. Sometimes they'll go to like a national competition, and the best scores from a grandmaster at that national level competition will inform how the USPSA sets the highest possible score for any given drill. And then all the subsequent finishes of that drill. So if the best shooter in the world goes to nationals and shoots a hit factor of 7 points, and 7 is the highest possible hit factor for a drill. Anyone who shoots 7 or higher is going to have 100% on that drill, and they'll end up with a grandmaster classification in that drill. If you shoot less than that 7-point hit factor, your score is calculated as a percentage of that highest possible hit factor, and where that percentage falls dictates what classification that you arrive into, and those classifications are stratified. Now, what's interesting about these 24 series classifiers, and I'm not a subject matter expert, and frankly, don't have an opinion on this because I'm not a good enough shooter for it to matter quite yet. But what I've seen online for folks that are involved in these 24 series classifiers is that rather than choosing the high hit factor as they have in the past, they looked at some local matches. They looked at what I would probably assume to be outlier high performances, and then their high hit factor decision was informed based off of those. And in situations where, for example, an M-class level shooter had the high hit factor of the day, they calculated it as though that M-level shooter wasn't quite a GM. So they would take his high-level score, and then they would add additional hit factor points to it and pretend as though a GM had shot it, and they would set the high hit factor in that way. So for some of that reason, a lot of these 24 series classifiers seem to have high hit factors that are unobtainable. For example, this one, 24-02, if you go onto hitfactor.info, which aggregates all this hit factor data so you can see, where you're shooting, hitfactor.info on 24-02, despite the couple hundred people who have shot this thing already, there has not yet been a GM level classification. The highest hit factor right now, the dude in first place shot a 9.2105 hit factor, and the highest recorded possible hit factor is 13.089. That means that he, despite being the number one shooter in the world at this drill right now on practice score, is still only like a C or a B level classification, which is obviously absurd. So there might be some dialing in that needs to happen. With that in mind, my score puts me somewhere around the 120 to 123rd mark out of people who have shot this thing so far. According to the current high hit factor, that's like somewhere around the 42-43% mark. And with that in mind, it's a C-level classification. What's interesting though is because this, the results here are a little bit skewed, when you go look at hitfactor.info, you see that folks sitting around that area, they're actually B, A, and a couple C-level shooters sitting around that area. And that's a recurring theme today. And what I learned, about my skill level is I'm somewhere between like a high C and a low B level of skill. Sometimes I outperform, sometimes I underperform, but my average is really sitting like high C, low B. And that's, a good starting point with plenty of room to improve. Now let's take a look at this next stage.
Stand by.
I don't know what the
Almost clear.
So this is another one of those 24 series classifiers. Overall, my performance, I'd call it average, not quite at the threshold of what my ability really should be, but overall like a decent performance. I would say that my draw presentation and entry into the first firing position felt extremely clean, and so did my dot acquisition, like the index and the presentation on the first two engagements. And then my recoil control was significantly improved in this match over the last match because I was thinking about it, I was paying attention to it. I was adding, proper pressures with my grip hand, and I have also been focusing on grip during dry fire, making sure I'm holding myself accountable. And so overall, like, while it's not perfect, it is significantly improved over last match. The first two targets went perfectly fine, and I actually really did like this stage. It's fun to shoot, but there's this large shooting area where you can either move into a firing position and take a series of 5 targets static. It's a couple, full-size silhouette, and then there's a no-shoot kind of partial in there as well. And you can either take that on the move, which is certainly like the most efficient and the right way to do it, and you have to have a certain skill level to be able to do that, or you can shoot it static. I shot it static, and I shot it well, but I probably lost some time as a result of taking that pause. I ended up taking 2 makeup shots later. I hit a pretty clean reload and don't have any concerns about that. Overall, like, this stage went reasonably well. Things to work on for me is just getting more comfortable taking those shots on the move, and really, like, that was my big takeaway from this one. So far as like performance is concerned, again, this was classifier 24-08. The name of the stage is And Now for Something Completely Different. And here I was 8th overall out of 40 on the day, and that was 64.3% off of our number 1 guy, who is a high-level M shooter. And then I had 21 alphas, 3 Charlies. So what that tells me is, like, that 21 alphas and 3 Charlies on that stage, I just need to be shooting faster. That's not a terrible break, but like, I expect to see slightly more Charlies there. And that also tells me that I should be a little bit more comfortable taking those shots on the move in the center, because I was just drilling A's all the way through there. My Charlies came when I was taking up those makeup shots later in the stage, not during that center portion of it. So I just need to be shooting faster and being more comfortable and aggressive during the movement. As far as like where this puts me, because it was another one of those 24 series classifiers, again, like, it's one of those situations where it's a little bit skewed. The current high hit factor, according to the USPSA, is 12.4033. Hitfactor.info automatically adjusts what they recommend for the high hit factor based off of all of the data from everyone who is shooting it so far. Their recommended high hit factor is 10.523. My performance on the day put me somewhere around 55%. So, mid-level C shooter, that was according to the USPSA guidelines. If we consider the hitfactor.info's recommended high hit factor, it puts me up at like 65%, which would be a, mid to low level B shooter. And again, like, recurring theme, high level C, low level B shooter. And I think that's a totally fair assessment of my performance. Now let's take a look at the next one.
Are you ready?
Ready.
Stand by. Are you ready?
Ready.
Stand by.
Oh, dang.
So this classifier stage is 22-05. It's a little bit older of one, and it is called Win Some, Lose Some. Definitely the most interesting stage of the day, and the first time I've shot one like this. There's 2 firing positions. You have 7 seconds, so it's a 7-second par time at each firing position, no more, no less, to accomplish what the drill asks you to do. You get 2 rounds per target from right to left, then a reload, and then from the far position, which is something like 25 yards away from the targets, strong hand only, 1 round each target. You move up to the nearer shooting box, again, 7 seconds, 2 rounds each target, reload, weak hand only, 1 round each shooting box. I didn't have a strategy for this just because it's such a bizarre stage. But what I ended up doing was drilling alphas from range, moving up and doing it again, and never taking a strong hand or a weak hand shot. I thought that this was my worst stage of the day. It turned out to be my best stage of the day. I ended up with an 8th overall finish, number 4 in carry optics. I shot 10 alphas, 4 Charlies, and 1 Delta. The Charlies and the Delta actually came, I think I dropped 1 Charlie from range, and then the other Charlies and the 1 Delta, I dropped up close just from speeding up my shooting cadence. couple weaknesses emerged during this stage. First, I don't practice draw from surrender position ever, like ever. So my draw felt extremely sluggish, and when you have a 7-second par to shoot this many rounds, you can't afford to waste any of that time. So that was the first big weakness. The second big weakness was I don't practice like weak-hand shooting or one-handed shooting almost never. I almost never practice it. And it feels extraordinarily uncomfortable to me because I don't practice it. So that's something I need to work into dry fire and into live fire because I don't feel confident doing it at all. And here, rather than do that, I just shot accurately. And that ended up giving me, it was essentially one of the top performances of the day. I ended up shooting 86% of our lead. The high hit factor on this guy is 100. It's a part-time drill, so the hit factors are a little bit weird. Yeah, I ended up shooting it somewhere around like a 63 percentile. So this was, a B-level classification for me, which was really surprising because, again, I didn't feel as though I performed particularly well because I just don't have the offhand and the strong hand shooting skills to perform well. So a couple things to work on there, but overall reasonably satisfied with it. Let's look at the next one.
Ready.
Stand by.
Come on.
If you are finished, unload and show clear. If clear, hammer down, holster.
This classifier is called Lefty Loosey. It's 22-02, and because it's not one of those 24 series classifiers, it's a well-calibrated, tried and true high hit factor of 8. So that's the current high hit factor. I ended up shooting it with a 4.392. That is enough to earn me close to 54% on my classification. So again, like a C level, right in the middle classification, which I think is indicative on this of my performance. I felt pretty sluggish in the beginning. My splits were not fast, but I was shooting reasonably accurately. I did end up finishing with 14 alphas, 4 Charlies. So again, I need to see a few more Charlies, need to be moving just a little bit faster. But what killed me on this stage, yes, my splits were a little bit slow. My movement wasn't perfect, but what really killed me on the stage was the weak hand only finish on the last 3 targets, and you can really see it. I'm completely unstable. Dot is all over the place, and I actually shot the stage the way that I did because 1, I thought it would be efficient, but 2, it put me as close to the targets as possible to finish with my weak hand. So absolutely missed a shot there, had to take a makeup shot, probably cost me half a second, maybe even a full second, and my hit factor would have been much higher had I just got that round on target or had I dry fired weekend only leading into this match and actually, performed where my performance should be. Let's take a look at the next one.
Are you ready? Ready. Stand by.
Finished, unload. Fly to see it, hammer.
One mic. Damn it.
Range is clear.
This classifier is called 22-04, Calm Before the Storm. It is really, really fun to shoot. It asks that you start in a seated position, hands on your knees. The beep sounds, you grab your gun, you immediately begin engaging 4 rounds to any 2 targets, reload 4 more rounds to the 2 remaining targets. Performance here was okay, I would say. I ended up finishing 5th in carry optics and 10th overall. Hit factor was a 4.3921 out of a possible high hit factor of 10.75. That is enough to put me again in a C level classification, which is perfectly acceptable. As far as my performance, getting out of the chair, getting the gun, getting the first 4 rounds on target felt good. Second target I had, it wasn't trigger freeze. It was my dot drifted into the partial area on the partial IPSC target on the left side. And this is a Virginia count stage, so there are no makeups. And so I hesitated, probably for the right reason, because it would have been counted as a mic, got back on target and engaged. Reload felt good, a little bit weird coming off the table, but overall pretty fine. And the second 2 targets felt good as well. My cadence slowed down a lot on the final target, but I did score 3 alphas and what I thought was a mic on the final target, but those 3 alphas in the head box were huge and helped drive the hit factor up, even though my cadence slowed down. And then what I thought was a mic was actually a delta, and I had clipped the top of the head. Here, the biggest thing holding me back, I shot the stage exactly as I planned to. Shot it, at the edge of the threshold of my capability. I would say that I still feel like I had maybe a few too many alphas. I could speed up my cadence, reduce my splits from where they are at like a 0.22, 0.25 split, get that down to like a 0.2 split, and just accept that that's going to mean more Charlies. But I think in the aggregate, especially on a stage like this, that really is just a speed shoot that would likely drive my hit factor up. And so that's something that I will be cognizant of going forward. Here we go.
I'm going that way.
Are you ready?
Ready?
Stand by. If you are finished, unload and show clear.
That's what you get for being fast.
If clear, hammer down. Holster.
Good.
All you damn fast guys, that's what you get.
Rank
You see,
clear.
I saw it and I fixed it.
So this classifier is called 24-09. It is another one of those 24 series classifiers called Tres Cajas. I really like this stage. It was my worst stage of the day. I ended up finishing 9th in carry optics and 20th overall, and that's not great. The current high hit factor according to USPSA is 12.1488. I shot it in 6.1681. I would say that, again, it's that 24 series classifier. Recommended high hit factor, according to the data, is 10.5695. And if I look at hitfactor.info, the #1 shooter in the country right now has shot a 90%. So no one's even shot 100%. No one's earned an M level classification or a GM level classification on this stage since it's gone live, which is kind of bonkers. And if I go down to where my score kind of fell into all of that, I'm right between like the 296th and the 300th person. And there's B, C, and unclassified level shooters all around that area, which again is like right on par with my skill level. And I don't know why I performed so poorly at the match here, because I thought my shooting went reasonably well. I had 13 alphas and 5 Charlies on this stage, and shot it in like 12 seconds or something like that. And, it felt pretty good. I knew that I made one mistake right there at the end in the left shooting box. When I arrived at that shooting position, my left foot actually went outside the shooting box. I had to pause for something like half a second, get my foot back in the box, and then engage. Accuracy was like acceptable or better throughout, frankly, with the 13 alphas and the 5 Charlies. And I would say it's a little weird to shoot 3 rounds per target just because our brains aren't used to it. But I'm actually eager for feedback on this stage. And is it just that for some reason at this match, everyone was shooting this stage fast? Because I felt that my performance on this stage was probably a little bit better than many of the others of the day. But despite that, it kind of put me in the middle of the pack. And I don't know if I can attribute that just to stepping out of the box and having to sacrifice a quarter or half second there at the end. That math doesn't seem to math for me. Overall, phenomenal experience. I expect that I will be an official C-level shooter next time USPSA runs their classification system, and I'm eager to continue to make progress. Again, I'm not butthurt about the classification. I'm certainly not butthurt that these 24 series classifiers are calibrated the way that they are. Frankly, I don't think that it matters much for me because I'm just getting started. But I am eager to continue to improve, and I do like looking at the data so I get an idea of, the kind of shooters that I'm surrounded by. And right now, according to the data, that's high-level C, low-level B shooters. I was hoping to classify into B class. That did not happen at this one. I expect that I'll be able to make it, relatively quickly. And the big things that I take away from my performance at this match that I know I need to improve is like, one, my index has to be so perfect that even when I'm nervous on the very first match of the day, that I'm getting a good dot acquisition regardless of the conditions around me. So that first screw up in the first stage of the day was unacceptable. Strong hand shooting only, weak hand shooting only, have to put the round counts in and just get used to doing it because I never do it and it feels terrible. But turns out there's a lot of classifiers and a lot of matches that require you to be able to do it. So I'm going to learn how to do it and to do it well. And the other thing is getting used to more reflexive shooting and just attacking targets and accepting that sometimes better splits and being able to take a few targets on the move and just accepting that that means you're going to take some C's is going to overall generate a higher hit factor. And that's just a gameism that I need to get used to. But overall, I'm having a blast learning this sport and progressing in it. I can certainly feel myself improving, and that is invigorating and exciting. And I appreciate you guys for coming along the journey with me. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.